Okay, so I am curious. So you fought the patriarchy. You've mastered that in a way. Um, how did you end up being your husband's agent? Because that's a fascinating story for me. Like,
Yeah,
how did that come about? Like,
yeah,
were you just one day in bed, like, honey, I'm going to be your agent now, or what's the story behind that?
yeah. So my husband and I are both divorcees, if I can call it
Okay.
that way. He was once married, I was once married. And I think from each one of us, from where we came from, we decided that going forward we needed happiness and peace. And then God, we found each other with that approach. And we always say to each other, or in the talk of complaining about what had happened to us, that self-reflection is very important, because it's what
That's true.
really builds their relationship and our relationship going forward, and not what happened or what the other parties did to us, because in those relationships clearly it took two to tango, and we were parties to those things. So I think my husband found me quite intelligent, and it was sort of, I actually don't know how it happened. I don't know. I don't remember us discussing it. I think I just remember him having to sign a contract, whether it was a super sport one or it was the Bafana one, and me taking it over, negotiating it, and making sure that it was done correctly. And that's how the role started. And I think he felt comfortable and confident enough to leave me to lead him in ensuring that what he signed was correct.
So that is love covering him.
That love and confidence in your wife.
This is true. And then in terms of, so you mentioned that you were married before. So
Yes.
do you find that there's a covering on your life when you're married versus when you're not, especially being a woman in business? Or do you find that God is your covering and regardless of your marital status, you're always covered? And like in terms of your career as well, it just ran a smooth path. So if you consider your first marriage and the covering you had within that marriage, when you left that and you were working as a single woman and then went back into the marital phase again, did you see a difference in the way that you were treated and a difference in navigating the business landscape or navigating the dating landscape? How was that transition? And do you believe that God was present or just the covering of marriage protected you in a way?
My belief is that God has always been
Covered you.
there. I believe God has always been there for me. I just believe that my first marriage was not a bad marriage. I think it was just maybe just the wrong timing in the marriage. I believe that when I was single, I'm actually grateful for that time before I met my husband now, because as young adults, because I was married when I was 28, my first marriage, I went through a space where I said, I'll finish school without, there was a lot of also teenage pregnancies in our times. I said, I'll never have a child outside marriage. That was my key thing. I'll first study and then I'll get married. So it was like, sort of a plan that shouldn't have been a plan, that forgot to understand who really Moira is. So I went through that, passed matric, had degree, got married, and then boom, what is happening? Had a child. So it all fell through the right sort of timing. But I think in that process, I forgot to ask myself and got to know who really Moira is.
Yeah.
And the divorce helped me because I was sort of alone or single for about 3 to 4 years to discover myself and to be at peace with me being with me. And I'm grateful for that. But I've never really questioned the processes that I went through, whether God was there with me or not. In fact, what I learned during those times, and I'm talking about the 3-4 years, which was very difficult, was that there is only God's timing, not my timing, because we want things to happen when we want them to happen, and they happen at the right time, which is God's time.
That's perfect. You mentioned, meeting your husband. How did you guys meet? Where did you meet? What was that like?
Yeah. So I used to be a board member of a certain company, and we were invited to a golf day. So I used to play golf a lot. I don't now, because it does take a lot of time. And he was invited as sort of a guest to give the winners the trophies of the golf day to the golf dinner. And I was always a football fanatic, and I used to watch soccer alone. And I used to see this guy coaching Supersport who everybody was against because he was very vocal and said what he said. And funny enough, on TV, I'll say, you know what, I agree with this guy actually. I'm with him. You know, everybody's saying, but how can he do this? But I'm thinking, I think he's right. And when I met him, I thought, but who's this guy? I've seen him somewhere. And we sat around the table
You
together.
didn't recognize him?
No, I didn't recognize him. It took me. I thought I know him. You know. Sometimes you even stop somebody and say, "Hey, did we go to varsity together?" And then say, "No." That time you've seen them on TV.
I get that.
Yeah, but as we went on and people said his name, I said, "Oh, that is that guy." And I remember we had a big. We were sitting around the table in dinner, and there was a big flower on the table. And I guess he thought, no man, who's that? And he took out the flower in front of everybody and put it on the floor to have a clearer view of me. And I got in late because I was staying in Cape Town, and he came a bit late also. And so we were eating. People had already finished eating, and he asked me, do you want dessert? I said no. And then he went to get dessert, and he got me dessert. And then when he left, he gave me a card of somebody else who he used to work with. And I'm thinking, what the nerve? This guy says now for me to talk to him, I must call that guy. But I gave him my number, and he called me, and yeah, the rest is history.
That's beautiful.
But what was quite interesting with my husband when I met him is that society expects Moira, the professional, to date a lawyer or a CEO of some sort or somebody, and for me, what really gels, what I learned from our relationship, and the fact that it's not typically, and I'm saying more about our parents, because you see, I've met a guy. The first thing is, what does he do, right? And when we were growing up, it was more about doctors.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that, and this is now my second marriage, is that matters of the heart are far much more bigger than than career. Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So he is my soulmate. He's my friend.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Best friend?
Best friend, definitely.
That's amazing.
Definitely.
So how are you guys navigating a blended family?
What we do is, so we've got 3 children.
Okay.
Lele, our 22-year-old, came from Pizo's marriage, and Kopano, our 20-year-old, came from my marriage, and Ria, the 10-year-old, is the blender, if I can call him that. So what we do really, I think we treat our kids equally, but when teenagers get to that age, it just so happened we didn't actually discuss it. For us to protect our relationships, I am the one who call out on Kopano, and Peter calls out on Lele.
Okay.
But it is us talking. Sometimes it's me talking or it's him talking, but I'm the communicator, and it's really it's really worked very well with them. Lele was telling me now she wanted to go somewhere, and then she said, no, I can't go because Kopano is in Cape Town at UCT, because Kopano is coming. So they've got even a much stronger relationship. Yeah.
So that's 2 daughters and a son, or 2 sons and a daughter?
Daughter and 2 sons.
2 sons.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Ria is Ria.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you have any battle stories from fighting the patriarchy? I'm just curious. Have you had to fight the patriarchy?
Yeah, I've had a lot. I've had a lot. And I don't know if I must. I don't know if I want to label it like that. I think we all in business fight different fights. Sometimes it's women to women. Sometimes it's women to male. Sometimes it's actually females imposing certain things on males. It
I'm
does
thinking
happen.
about that one.
It does happen.
Okay.
It does happen to an extent that when we think about abuse, it's very easy for us to say women, whereas men are also abused.
Yeah.
I'm very aware about that because
True.
I've got boy children. So I think it happens that the industries that I'm in are male dominated. And I don't take it like that. I take it as a fight or a disagreement or a behavior that I need to correct and I cannot accept. And I deal with it like that, as powerful as I can.
So how do you keep your children inspired? Sorry, going back to that.
Yeah, so with my kids, I remember Kopano, the 19-year-old boy, once said in his mid crisis of being an adolescent, that he feels the pressure because of the successful parents that he has.
Wow.
That he feels pressure that he needs to perform. And I have meetings with my kids where I say to them, you've got to be the best of you. And if the best of you for me is a 50%, I'm happy. If the best of you is 70 and you give me a 50, it's unacceptable. So I keep them motivated that it is important that they give and they put their best foot forward all the time. And that there is no measurement with anybody of what that is for them. And we have really an open relationship. I think that question you must ask my kids. I'll get 10 out of 10 for that. Really, I believe, that they must be themselves. And they must always put their best foot forward, no matter what that percentage is.
So do you find that your parenting skills have a lot of your own parents' way of parenting? Do you find that you regurgitate stuff that your parents said to you, or like their methods, or have you changed that?
Yeah, so my mother and my father were divorced before I was born, really. So I was brought up by a single mom. What I really take a lot out of my mother is the freedom she gave us to be responsible and independent. My mother, when you say to her, I am going out, she will ask you, do you have money? Because you can never go out and be stranded wherever you are. She gave us the freedom to make mistakes and be. And I think that's what I'm giving to my children. Yeah, and if that is the repetition, when we were growing up, it was acceptable for us to be beaten by our parents. I'll tell you, my mother never beat us. She spoke to us, and that is sort of I guess now my kids will tell you, do you know that? I don't know what that number, child line. If you are screaming at them, there's a child line number. You can't talk to me like that.
My son uses that with me too. Yeah.
And then they call the number already for you to say, So we didn't have that. So I guess to a certain extent, yes, we're using that. I just find sometimes in marriages where we need to balance is the way I was brought up versus the way my husband was brought up is different. And because we are friends, and I'm calling it soulmate, and I think the biggest success for us is being able to talk and listen and agreeing to disagree in certain instances helps us to bring up our children the way we bring them up.
I think it's beautiful. Not everybody gets that opportunity. I think you're being very, very blessed from that perspective.
Thank you.
I think it's really great. What is your favorite song? Do you have a favorite song?
Oh, I've got a favorite song by Moira Tlhagale, who passed away. I don't know the name of the song now that you ask me.
Can you sing it?
I can't.
Okay.
I've forgotten it.
Is it an upbeat song?
What's
What's the message of the song?
It's got no message. I once put it on with some friends of mine. It's love, death, and something. I don't know what the song is about, but it's a beautiful, calming, sort of painful song though, but a beautiful song. I'll let you listen to it.
So this is like your theme song when you're cooking or when you're driving?
It's a theme song when I'm sometimes in some space. I think it's an abstract song. That song, actually, if you ask me, and I'll let you listen to it. But it's just a song that just calms me down. So I don't use it when I'm cooking. I'm a talker at home. The other day I was asking my kids, but in this house, who do you think is the most talkative? And they said, you are.
Oh,
So I'm a talker. So I don't really know.
That's great.
Yeah.
What gives you joy?
What gives me joy is peace and happiness. Really, simple like that. Peace and happiness. I want to be in a happy environment that is peaceful. That's it.
And when I ask you, okay, so I'm just curious, are you reading anything right now? Is there a favorite book that you've read?
I've read a lot of different books. I think the latest book that I read now was Ntate Kgang Moseneke's book. Not the latest one, the one before. I think the latest one is Let Us Stand, something about there being a judge. The one before, it was quite an interesting one. But I really do my more reading now is researching the space that I'm in, which is the sports space. I do a lot of reading, understanding the rules, the laws, who's doing what. So my reading is more researching, really, in my workspace.
So that also helps you stay relevant in your work.
100%, yeah.
How do you benchmark success? Or how do you benchmark yourself? Do you benchmark yourself against yourself? Do you look at your mother's life and think, well, when my mom was... So what's your benchmark in life?
I don't know. I don't think no. I don't benchmark myself against anybody really. Or I think, I don't know if the word benchmark would be right word to answer this. But what I do is I set goals, and the success is having achieved those goals. Is what I say that is a tick of the success. A typical example is the whole world not thinking that we'll be able to deliver because the stadiums are not going to be ready, and then being able to deliver on that and hosting the World Cup. That is the success benchmark.
You know, you're a mother, managing director, wife, sister, friend. How are you keeping all those balls in the air? Or how are you living? How are you not dropping any ball, rather?
Yeah, so when I started my own business, I was just going around, just going about it. And when I started being the leader of the World Cup, I decided to get a life coach. It was somebody who was in HR, who was an executive coach, really. And we had few sessions, but one of the key things I got out of that was about time management and sticking to that. So I've learned to have time for everything. And it was so interesting in the time management process that I went through, that the question we went through at some point was, what is the most important thing in your life? And I had to write about 10 in an order of priority. And where do you spend most of your time? And I had to write that in an order of priority. And very funny, they never gelled. right? Family being most important, time being spent more at work. So in how I try to balance, like with my husband, we say we all have our busy schedules, but we've got a Thursday and a Sunday, which are the days that we try and spend time together, whether we go out to the movies or we go to the market or we go out for lunch with the kids. So we've got specific time. In between that, I've got sort of a rigid set program. When I say to you, I woke up at 4 o'clock, I knew I have to sleep at 10. So when there is a family gathering or whatever, I know now this session on a Sunday when I was supposed to have been sleeping, I do. My Sunday afternoon are my sleeping time. I know it can change a bit, but this is sort of really generally how I manage my time.
Your husband is very well known. It would be a very powerful surname to have, and yet you don't use it. Why is that?
So I met my husband when I was already in business, having my own identity first and foremost. Secondly, we are a blended family, and Kopano, my son, uses his father's surname. So I remember when I was pregnant of Rhea, who is 10 years younger than Kopano. Kopano said, "Oh, I'm going to be the odd one out with a different surname." So at that time we married, but I'd not changed my surname anyway because I felt I was really entrenched in my business with my surname, and for me, what's in a name, right? But I think Kopano's comment really entrenched that fundamentally to say indeed what is in a name. So Piso and I discussed that. He had no qualms about which surname I used. But really with me being a professional and being Moira, me, myself and I did not really want to be labeled as Pitso Musimane's wife. I think it is incorrect. And I'm happy that for the longest of time, people did not know who I am and who Pitso's wife is, because I think it makes us as women lose the value that we have in society, because people then don't look at you as you, but as somebody else's wife. So yeah, so really it's to be me. It was really to make sure that Mr. Odd One Out, I'm with him being the odd one out in the surname, and also just not being categorized as somebody else's wife because a person is famous on TV. And by the way, Peter is doing brilliant work in terms of his department of his career. But I think equally, spouses need to be recognized as their self rather than as people's wives. Yeah, that's the reason.
So would you say navigating humanity in a modern world is something that women have to sort of navigate as well, on top of being an African woman with all the traditions, with your traditions? There's also this Moira who is challenging the status quo by not changing your surname because you're a self-made woman. Is there space for that for the African woman? I mean, you're clearly saying yes, but when you think about a woman that hasn't been as privileged as you have been, do you believe that there's still a space for her to stand up and say, no, I will not conform to traditions. I will stand my ground and be this woman for myself?
Yeah, I was, the reason I'm keeping quiet, I'm just thinking about the women in my life, and in particular my grandmother who brought me up really, and how she managed her life with my grandfather, doing, what is expected as a woman to be done. I think we've been fortunate that as we grow, our husband also understand that, and my grandmother was a nurse, understand that we are also workers. In a sense, you come back tired. So what I don't expect from my husband is that me and him are fighting that I cooked yesterday, you cooking. I take that as my responsibility. But that does not mean I have to do the cooking. I make sure that I enable the environment to ensure that those things are taken care of, right? And I don't know that certain things that traditionally women are apparently supposed to do. I don't really necessarily follow them. I follow just basic rules in my marriage of love and respect. And I think that's what gets us going. It's not really about you being the one who is always bringing food, cooking, or making tea for the other person. We make tea for each other, but there is just that mutual respect and love. And that's really what grounds me, and that's what I follow.
Okay, what would you tell the younger you?
The younger who?
You, like younger Moira, like when you look back on your life and the little girl or the young lady that you were, what would you tell her, given what you know now?
I would say you've done very well. You've done good. You know, I started school when I was 5 years. I don't know how I made it. I made it to matric, to be honest, because I finished when I was 16. I don't know. I went to Technicon. I went to university. So it took me about 8 years to finish my post-matric studying with the diploma and the degree. My kids must not listen to this. I never really loved school studying, but I did study for 8 years. But I just felt that I stumbled along the way. And I think after maturing, I am more aware of the why and the how and the what. So I think I've done pretty damn good. I told myself as a young Moira that I want to be a successful person, and the reason why I continued with my studies is at the time when you had a diploma, you couldn't own your own business, and I never saw myself all my life working for somebody, and that's why I decided to go and study further.
Yeah.
So I'll say, yay, you've done very well, little Moira. Yeah.
I think you've done exceptionally well.
Thank you.
What would you tell a young girl from your township or a young woman anywhere in the world who is just starting out in life?
Yeah, it's belief in yourself and work hard. You know, I learned even when I was very young that for some odd reason, when I put a lot of effort in studying, I used to get distinctions. And after getting distinctions, I would say, oh no, man, I'm intelligent and I won't study. Then my marks would drop. So I think the lesson is you get what you put in. So I would say work hard to achieve whatever goal you want to achieve, and it is possible. And as an example, I can tell you, I see that consistently with my husband, the amount of effort and work he puts in his job to be where he is. Yeah. So I think the message is, if you want something, you've got to work hard. Nothing comes easy, really. You have to work for it.
So how do you recharge?
So I think for me, when I'm really stressed, to be honest, the key thing is running. So whether I go to the gym and put it on the fastest speed for 10 minutes and train, that's how I recharge, how I calm myself down, because I'm a talker, is when I'm sleeping, really. Or just, sharing with my husband the day's thoughts and us fighting to listen to each other. But, that friendship, that's really it. I also do a lot of mommy duties where my Rhea plays soccer. So that is also part of, really, I think, my recharging space, because you go there, you sit, and then you sit and you watch. Yeah.
Life mantra, do you have one?
Life mantra?
Yeah.
Do unto others as you wish them to do unto you. That's my life mantra.
Okay, it's beautiful. It's biblical. And parting words of wisdom in general to anyone, to everyone.
Do unto others as wisdom to do unto you.
Parting words? Okay.
That's it, really. And, strive for peace and happiness.
What is love to you, and how do you, what's your love language, and how do the people around you show you love?
Being selfless. When you see somebody got out of their way to do something for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's being selfless. And I think this is how I share my love with my family and with my friends. Being selfless, being there when you need it, being there when somebody wants somebody to listen. Being there, it's just being selfless, nothing about you, but the person. I think that's how I show my family love. That's how I appreciate the love. It's not really about the present, It's selflessness, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you see the games that you grew up playing? So when you think of young Moira playing with her family, the games that you played, the songs that you sang growing up, do you find, or when you think back at it, do you see how it shaped you and how a lot of that has actually come through in your adult life?
No, I don't know. No, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of things, there's few things that I can think about that has happened when I was young that have shaped me to the opposite. To say I would not allow that to happen, and I wouldn't do it that way because I feel it is incorrect. And shaped, so basically, let me say an example, a situation of my mom in an abusive relationship, and me saying I would never allow that and be in that situation. A situation where you see behaviors of selfishness and greed, and say I would never ever want myself to subject myself to people like that or behave like that. And I think that is where the mantra that I have comes from, that people who do certain things, they do them to others, but they don't want that to be done to them. So that is why for me that is so important.
I think that actually also explains your love language, because you don't like selfishness, so therefore your love language is selflessness.
Yes.
I think that actually ties in. You learned that from your childhood, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah.
I think we're done. Do you have a song from your childhood, like a game that you played in the streets?
In the street we used to play a thing called skipping. Skipping, you like 3 people with a pantyhose, okay?
Okay.
A pantyhose, you put it together, like you tie it together, and then 3 people stand, and then you start here, and then you jump, and it comes to here.
What's the name of the game?
Skipping.
That's just it?
Yeah, okay. Remember in the township, I'm a Tswana speaking person, you Englifies a language. So skipping, it was called skipping, which you were skipping pantyhose. We're jumping it, but we called it skipping, right? It doesn't matter.
So it was quite, it almost required a lot of athleticism?
Yeah, and I was the best. Okay. Now you put it, and then they put it here, 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 and then I put it there.
Yeah, I know the game you're talking about.
I could jump. So
really?
Yeah, I was that.
That's impressive.
So by the way, as a parting shot, my son, the last one, our son, I must correct, because I always correct Peter when he says my son. I said our. Rhea, quite athletic, right? Okay. And people keep on saying, it's because of the father. I say, and the mother. And the mother.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So that's the one thing that I remember.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
I've learned quite a bit.